Hello, and welcome back to James and the Frames. May the 4th be with you all, and yes, it has been a while. It's been even longer when you consider that Season 1 of this podcast ended a few months ago. But now, I'm happy to finally say that Season 2 starts now. And what a start we have. Again, today is May the 4th, and for those who don't know that Obi-Wan's last name is Kenobi, it is Star Wars Day. But as the saying goes, always two there are. So, I'd like to welcome fellow filmmaker and Star Wars fan, as well as the main man behind the incredible Instagram film page, The Dance of Cinema, Bruce Tetsuya. Is that how I pronounce your name?
Absolutely correct, yeah.
All right. How are you, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming
I'm
on.
excited to talk about Star Wars because nobody wants to anymore.
That's a great opener, and we'll be doing that exactly. But before we begin, Bruce, it's great to have you on. I've been following your page for quite a bit. Guys, go follow at The Dance of Cinema on Instagram. He's currently in his top 200 film list, which is coming along swimmingly.
Yeah.
What is it exactly? What else besides the Instagram page? What are you into, Bruce? What's your style? What's your filmmaking work like?
Yeah. The page sort of started as just like a hobby to share movies and stuff that I was into with my friends. But we're coming up on my 4-year anniversary, I think, of running it. So over the 4 years, we've amassed a bit of a small following, and it's been a lot of fun to manage that on the side. But yeah, mainly I shoot fashion, film, and photo, and I do like occasional branded video projects, stuff like that for a living. So I'm technically freelancing right now, but yeah, I'm shooting for a couple different brands.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
It pays the bills,
Yeah.
you know. I'm able to use my camera for work, so I can't really complain there. But yeah, other than that, like my goal is to sort of be self-sustained, just directing within like the next 3 years. I think it's a doable goal, but that's what I'm working towards.
That's awesome, man. That is so cool. And you're currently working on a short film too, aren't you?
Yeah, we're in post-production right now, in between post and some pickup shoots, but yeah, the short is called Embers, and it's a sort of a short poetic piece. Pretty excited about it, yeah.
That sounds amazing, and I know you well for your short poetic pieces. Bruce has a really nice, really great YouTube channel. He's done some cool Star Wars edits and some incredible short films as well, so go ahead and check his channel out.
Thank you.
But yeah, with all introductions aside, it is May the 4th.
It is.
And normally on James and the Frames, I've talked about the prequels. I've talked about the use of Duel of the Fates throughout the prequel trilogy. I've talked about the originals in the way that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader might meet again in the Obi-Wan miniseries, but I've never really touched on the sequels all that much. And I'd really like to dedicate this episode to talk about the sequel trilogy and how it's impacted the Star Wars fan base and our favorite moments and movies from it, and just talk very critically and pensively about it. If you're looking for a bashing of the sequels or someone trashing on them, you're not going to find that here. So if you're all into that whole crazy
hate train,
this is not the choo-choo train you would want to be on. But yeah, so let's talk sequels, and let's talk Star Wars in general. First of all, what I'm going to start with is what was the first Star Wars movie you ever saw, and what were your first experiences with it?
So the first one I saw was A New Hope, or just Star Wars. I can't pinpoint, like I was so young when I first watched it. My dad was the one who introduced it to me, as is the case with a lot of people. But yeah, I can't pinpoint like an exact first experience I had. They've sort of all just blended together. Like Star Wars has always been a part of my life, but I just know that I did watch them in release order.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't experience the prequels until a little bit later. So yeah, I watched A New Hope, then Empire, then Return of the Jedi. I was born in '96, so I just missed
Oh, you
Phantom
just
Menace
missed it.
coming
Yeah.
out. Well, that came out in '98, right?
99, yeah.
99. I would have been 3,
Right.
so yeah, I did miss it there. But yeah. Yeah, I watched my first theater watch was Attack of the Clones.
Oh, really?
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I caught that in theaters, and then I do remember that experience.
Oh, do tell us about it. What was one thing you took away from it? It was probably the Yoda scene, wasn't it? It was probably the Yoda scene.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, so this is something we'll probably get into later, but like there was no real like online huge presence for criticism on any of the films.
Right.
Like I'm sure there were like blogs and stuff hating on the films, but at that point that was like the biggest I had seen Star Wars. And like I've seen the originals in theater releases since then, but that was like my first theater experience with Star Wars. So although Attack of the Clones is not my favorite film of the series saga, it does hold that special place in my heart just because like that was the biggest I'd seen it. And so yeah.
That's
and
so
then I
cool.
did see Revenge of the Sith in theaters
Oh
as
my
well.
I envy you.
And then yeah. What year were you born?
I was born in
Not to date myself, but
I was born in 2001, so I was about like 4 when Revenge of the Sith came out. So I missed the whole prequel craze. I wasn't even near it. I was first introduced to Star Wars, I believe it was one evening where we went to a DVD store. Yes, this was the time when video rental places were open. And
I miss it.
I miss it so much too. And I saw, you know how the DVDs of the original trilogy had like this box art where it was like the metallic Roman numerals and then like art next to it on the right side. Like I saw the one
I have it
for,
upstairs, yeah.
That's awesome. I saw the one for Star Wars A New Hope, and I saw the one for Revenge of the Sith. And I guess the conversation, I don't remember any of the rest of the conversation, but one thing led to another, and I was watching episode 4 on my DVD player in my house, and it was awesome. I don't remember the exact like thing I took away from it. I remember that it was insanely like blew me away, of course. And I watched, of course, the 2004 special version of it, not the original theatrical release. And I honestly didn't know the difference at that time. And here's where it gets a little weird. I saw episode 3 after episode 4. And it's I know it's a very strange viewing order. I saw episode 3 after episode 4. And I was like, okay, those two dots connect very well. And it was newer, and it kind of merged together with me a bit more. I don't know how to explain it very well, but it flowed. And then a couple years later, I hadn't seen Star Wars for a bit. I actually got the chance to see the original trilogy on VHS. And I went up to, I believe it was Montana, and we spent a couple weeks there. And this guy had the original trilogy box set. I'm like, wow, what is this? And I put it in, and it's like this whole intro, like experienced it for the first time on video or something like that. It's this whole intro. And I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I remember bawling my eyes out when Han was being lowered into the carbonite chamber. I was like, Han Solo's dead? But yeah, those were my first experiences with Star Wars at home. And believe it or not, the first Star Wars film I saw in theaters, most people think like, okay, you saw The Force Awakens in theaters, because I talk about that experience a lot. But I actually saw The Phantom Menace 3D when it got re-released in theaters.
Right.
I went to see that in like 3D, and it was incredible. And I'm still surprised why they didn't carry out the rest of the 3D releases. I feel like that would have been awesome. But that's the history of James with Star Wars, and a lot more tales to tell. But those are my first experiences.
Yeah. I find that a lot of the time people's perceptions of the sequels depends on what year they were born, which is why I asked, because
Yeah.
Like, for me, I sort of grew up in between generations. Like, I was way after the originals. I was born when the prequels started, but I wasn't old enough to appreciate them fully.
Right.
But like my freshman year of university was the fall and winter when The Force Awakens came out in 2015. And they were released, that and The Rise of Skywalker were like 4-5ish years apart. So the year I was graduating was when the Rise of Skywalker was released. So the sequel trilogy really like bookended my my early adult life, because those three films were with me like the entire time I was in college, which are very formative years for film people. So
I can imagine. And same here. I was finishing high school during that period. We graduated in 2019. It was a great way to grow up. And I'm guessing you didn't get to see Force Awakens in theaters, did you, or did you?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you
yeah,
did?
Force Awakens.
Okay.
I saw it. I saw all of the sequels at the 6 p.m. day before like fan release. I went to all of them.
That's awesome.
And like, it's funny because the friends that I brought to them were not like huge Star Wars fans, but you can't go alone. So
Right.
I just like bought extra tickets and then I made my buddies just come along. But no, all three are like very memorable nights for sure.
Very memorable nights. I remember the Force Awakens opening night. If me crying during Han Solo's supposed death in The Empire Strikes Back means anything, you can probably imagine how I reacted in the theater.
Oh no.
Luckily I didn't say anything yet, but spoilers here for the entire sequel trilogy. I didn't give away too much, I don't think. Yeah, so Han Solo's death, I mean, it really moved the story forward in a way that just kept me engaged during those last 20 to 25 minutes. It was probably the most suspenseful moment I've ever had in a theater, with Kylo Ren's whole like internal monologue and that father-son moment, only to be completely drowned out by this dark imagery that preceded. I remember like screaming like no in the theater, like really like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon-ish, like no, and everybody's like oh no, and like the whole theater went silent as like Han like did like the whole like hand thing. But let's talk about that scene for a second. I was fascinated by Adam Driver's performance in that moment. There's a little 10-second pause before he says I'm being torn apart, and he has like this facial expression on, and you see so much going on inside his head. Great facial acting, great expressiveness. I'm guessing your favorite character is going to be Ben out of the trilogy. It's mine too, but you're free to say.
I mean, Adam Driver's my favorite working actor, and he has been since like 2012-ish when I first saw him in Francis Ha. But when I first heard he was being cast in Star Wars, it was like a little bit of a culture shock to me because he's this like indie darling actor guy. And I was like, there's no way he's going to fit in well here. And he ends up being like hands down like the most interesting character in the entire saga.
I'd agree with you there. I mean, it's close to Anakin and his whole dark side journey. Mm-hmm. Like it mirrors that, and it does it really well.
Yep.
This has been said time and time before, but he's being pulled to the light instead of being called back to the dark. So it's a very interesting dynamic to see there, to see someone trying to escape whatever pain he has by trying to become a Sith or trying to delve into his emotions in a bad way. And you see how it affects him throughout the entire trilogy. And Adam Driver just portrays that brilliantly. Cool dude. Top guy. And I love how chill he is about it. In terms of every interview you see with him, he reminds me of Harrison Ford getting interviewed as Han Solo. Like he's
the spitting image of young Harrison Ford. Like people are always like, I don't know why they cast Adam Driver, like blah blah blah. Like he doesn't even look like him. I'm like,
wow. If
you look at pictures of young Harrison Ford, like side by side, it's unreal how much he resembles him.
It's uncanny, definitely. And I actually saw this the other day. I was browsing the Indiana Jones subreddit because that's where I get all my Indiana Jones 5 news. And some guy asked, what's a good recast for Indiana Jones? And some guy put Adam Driver. And some guy said,
That would be crazy.
He looks nothing like him. And I just did a hasty Reddit reply. I said, I basically said exactly what you said. I said, look at pictures of young Harrison Ford, look at young pictures of Adam Driver.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's great.
I also actually, just a side tangent really quick. The casting choice for Kylo Ren before Adam Driver was Eddie Redmayne.
Really?
Which I think would have been the worst thing that could have happened to Star Wars. Not to sound like an asshole, but like after seeing his performance in Jupiter Ascending or whatever that was, like
I remember that.
I mean, I didn't even watch the movie, but I've seen clips, and I
agree with you there. He's a fantastic actor with some roles that he's given, but some roles aren't just for certain actors.
Sure.
And Adam Driver has that darkness and conflict to him that I don't think Eddie Redmayne could have done well.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm coming from. And and the sequel trilogy is an interesting one because I am like really biased for it, but at the same time, I think a lot of my biases are like kind of warranted.
Really? How so?
I do think though, well, the main thing that I love about the sequels is the performances actually in Rey and Kylo Ren's characters. And legitimately, like, if two other actors besides Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley had been casted, I don't think I would have had as strong of a emotional attachment to the sequels. It's truly like them two that makes the trilogy for me.
Oh yeah, their dynamic is amazing, especially during the later two entries in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. So we've already gone through, our favorite characters and our favorite actors. I'd also like to talk about scenes and certain moments that may have stood out to you. One definite moment for me is of course Han's confrontation with Kylo, both in The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. I think that's a very poetic bookend to Ben's character journey. I thought it was really well done. I don't know if you have any. Well, of course you do. Why am I saying it?
No, I absolutely agree. That scene, both of those scenes actually, just the fact that like they shot it as a shot for shot remake, like they're the exact same angles, exact same coverage, the hand touch to the face, like both of them are just paralleled the exact same, and it's beautiful because the second of the two, like Han isn't a Force ghost, like he wasn't Force sensitive, and so like it's purely what Ben remembers, and the fact that they decided to portray it that way just speaks volumes to like how they wanted to show Ben's like psychology in that moment, and how this is the moment where he's been like replaying it in his mind, and he's probably rehearsed this so many times over in his head, like wished he could go back and like take it back, and so just seeing that like actually play out it's probably my favorite scene in The Rise of Skywalker. And I am actually a little bit mixed on episode 9.
We'll get into it. Don't worry.
We'll get into it for sure.
Yeah, those scenes are incredible. I noticed you mentioned same coverage, same close-ups, and speaking of coverage and close-ups, sequel trilogy has some of the best shot Star Wars.
100%. It is it's honestly not even close. The sequel trilogy has the best cinematography. It has the best blend of practical and, special effects.
It does.
One thing's for sure, like they took what people criticized about the prequels, and they took what made the originals great, which is like the immersion of the practical effects and sets and stuff, and they combined the two pretty flawlessly, I think.
They really did. And what a lot of people don't notice when criticizing these films, they criticize the story, they criticize sometimes the performances and just the films themselves, saying that this is a bad movie or it's a bad made movie. They usually overlook the technical aspects of everything that went into it. I don't know if you saw the behind the scenes documentary for Rise of Skywalker.
All of them.
All of them. Yeah, me too. I love watching behind the scenes Star Wars documentaries. I mean, for the Rise of Skywalker more than anything, you see how much work is put into these films. You see all the people involved, all the setups, all the rehearsals that have to happen to make something work. And it's really something to watch so many people working together to accomplish one thing, which is what I love about filmmaking. And I think those documentaries capture that really well, especially in the last one. And I also like the prequel documentaries too. They offer some great insight into the wave of digital filmmaking that was basically reshaping the industry at that point, because George Lucas was the one to pioneer it. Anything having to do with behind the scenes Star Wars is like a must watch for anybody who wants to get into filmmaking, into that, because it's not just about green screens and all that. You get to see the collaboration between lots of folks. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, technical aspects are amazing, and
haters always like to look past it. Haters don't want to yeah.
They always like to look past it. And my general thoughts on the sequel trilogy as a whole is that I like it. It's good Star Wars. There aren't specific moments that I feel like I need to dwell on to make the movie feel bad. Like, there's plenty of strange scenes in these movies. A lot of people like reference the whole Canto Bight subplot in The Last Jedi as something that shouldn't really have been there, and I kind of agree with them there. But it's still, I mean, if you look at it as like a fun buddy cop detour, it's fun that way. I tend to look at things in the most positive way I can, instead of the things in the most negative way I can, which is what a lot of Star Wars fans do. And I'm not saying that like it's a good or bad thing to do that. You have your own opinion, you have your own way to look at things, but sometimes just look at both sides of the story. Look and trying to understand how other people like it.
For sure. And I mean, people who criticize the sequel trilogy about plot holes and like just realism, I guess, I think maybe should rewatch the originals.
Yeah, there's
like, the original trilogy will probably always be like the greatest in terms of storytelling, but like it's fantasy. Like, you can't really fault it for being campy or goofy at times. That's sort of like the essence of Star Wars. Like, it's not supposed to be 100% drama the whole way through.
It's supposed to be like one of those old adventure serials that inspired George to do it.
It's a space opera, right?
Instead of a soap opera, it's a space opera. That's what I've heard that before.
Lots of family drama. It makes sense.
Yeah, plot holes. I agree with you there. Like, one I can point out right now is when Han sees Lando for the first time after Lando betrayed him and imprisoned him in carbonite. He like kind of just goes up to him and hugs him like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" Like, there's no like character like, "You kind of messed up my life there for a second. I'm not gonna trust you." And then, of course, Han Solo was originally supposed to die in Return of the Jedi, but they kept him in.
Right, yeah. I was going to bring that up earlier when you were talking about how Han's death propelled Episode 7, actually. Because, yeah, Harrison Ford has been wanting to kill off that character for decades.
He's so funny about it, too. I love the interviews.
Yeah. He's a legend for sure.
Same thing for Indiana Jones. I don't know if you saw the clip where it's introducing John Williams at AFI Life Achievements. He walks on stage and the Indiana Jones theme plays. He's like, "That damn song follows me everywhere."
Yeah, I have seen that.
It's he's an absolute legend. But I hear you when talking about that. And what I'd also like to touch on, we're seeing how the sequels are being criticized in somewhat of a similar fashion to the prequels when they came out. And 10 or 15 years have passed now. Well, Revenge of the Sith turned 15 last year.
Wow.
Soon this trilogy is going to get some time on it. Like, it's going to sit there for a bit. And let's say when the new trilogy rolls around, it's not going to be a continuation of the Skywalker saga, of course, but I mean, it might be. You never know.
I believe them when they say it's done. Because of how they ended 9, I think they will actually move on.
I think they will too. There's the question of, will people look at the sequel trilogy in the same way that people look at the prequels now? The people who grew up with this trilogy will introduce those who didn't grow up with it to its brilliance or to its incredible storytelling, which it has that. It has some great plot lines and threads and everything. And the prequels have that too. If you look at George's like story vision, it's like a Greek tragedy.
Yep.
And if you listen to like John Williams' score for the 3 movies and like just think about it, it really hits you hard. And if you apply that to watching the movies, it hits even harder. Do you think that the sequels will be looked at in the same way as the prequels in a few years?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I don't think anybody can know right now,
Right.
just because online culture changes so ridiculously rapidly.
It does.
It's hard to predict how any film will be received years from now, let alone like the biggest franchise of all time. I hope that the reception of it, ages like fine wine and people are able to sort of let go of their, honestly, like animosity. Like people hate this trilogy. And I'm really hoping that, with time, people will sort of come around to it like they did with previous ones. I mean, if you look at the general trend for Star Wars, it does show that time equals forgiveness.
It does.
But,
Yeah.
it's definitely hard to say.
It is.
Yeah, modern Disney era Star Wars in general will be a mixed bag because some people think like the Mandalorian's inclusion of Luke has redeemed them a little bit as the helms of the franchise, and
Yes, in some ways.
it's definitely going to be weird to look back on Disney era as a whole. I think for me at least, the rose-tinted glasses have come off a little bit, and I am able now to realize the flaws of the sequel trilogy. If you had talked to me right before episode 9 had released, I would have fought to the death defending episode 7 and 8.
Yeah, me too.
I do think, episode 9 did some very questionable things with its arcs.
It did.
That really, like, as much, I'm the biggest Star Wars lover you'll come across, but it left a really, like, sour taste in my mouth.
Well, let's talk about that for a little bit.
I think we probably should.
What things? Well, I know that the whole Palpatine coming back was a huge factor into many people's perception of how the story went, and I love that Ian McDiarmid is back in the saddle again. He's just great to watch. He has a great time playing his character. But with the way that the things were left off, with the way that things were left off in episode 8, there was a really good setup for a lot of characters, Ben Solo in particular. And in my video essay, I'm going to maybe touch on that a little bit, because at the end of The Last Jedi, he has this cleansing moment. And if you've seen the video already, you'll know what I'm going to talk about. He and Luke battle on a salt planet, and underneath that salt is a red soil. And the whole planet is metaphorical. It's metaphorical for Ben's wounds that he has to heal. How rubbing salt into those wounds will ultimately mend his wounds as Kylo Ren. And Luke and Ben fight on top of that bloodied, salty battlefield. And at the very end, Luke kind of just tells Ben, killing me won't do anything to relieve the pain that you're feeling. And if you listen to what he says to Leia before he says, I can't save him, many people perceive that as Luke giving up on Ben. But what I perceive it as is that he's saying, Ben is the only person who can do this. And by seeing what he's doing, by seeing what he's doing, he's going to make that decision on his own. And what you were saying about replaying the Han moment in his head, he's questioning himself, like, is this really what I want to do? And if you see at the very end, when Rey closes the Millennium Falcon door in his face, he kind of has like a little reaction to it. And the dice in his hands, the golden Han's dice, fade away. And he kind of has this moment, you see the shot of him kind of like alone in the control room, just kneeling.
Yep.
And you really feel like he's having this moment of like, I'm just not doing the right thing here. And he experiences somewhat of an epiphany in that moment, I think. And I think it was a great setup for his character in The Rise of Skywalker. And it does happen in The Rise of Skywalker. But I don't know what you feel. I don't know how you feel his character was handled in that movie. Do you think that it was a good continuation of where it was left off?
It starts off well. I think, first of all, Ryan Johnson is just a genius in terms of structure.
He is.
It's very evident in like his other films like Brick and Knives Out and Brothers Bloom and stuff like
Even
that.
Looper.
Looper. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know why I left. Yeah, Looper for sure. And so the main criticism, like I think each of the sequel films is good on its own. Like even The Rise of Skywalker, if there was nothing before it, no context, it's pretty good. It's just the fact that like the through line from film to film is pretty disjointed, and it does stem from the fact that they trusted different directors to helm each piece. I mean, I'm just glad that Trevorrow didn't do 9. Like it would have been even worse.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that concept? Have you seen the concept art and
I've
read
seen
the
it,
script?
and I think it's dumb.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of him in general. So regardless of what happened, I don't know exactly what the fallout was, but creative differences.
Yeah,
that's
creative
just what they say.
differences. And yet they say Lucasfilm is and Kathleen Kennedy doesn't know what she's doing. Well,
I'm not like defending their decision to fire him necessarily. I just don't personally like the way that he
okay.
handles big movies like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly like how the sequel films are connected that things start to fall apart a little bit.
Exactly. I hear you there.
Yeah. Going back to Ryan Johnson being a structural genius, I think they should have just given him 9. Like JJ is great at setting up everybody knows like JJ's mystery box. He's insanely talented at writing first acts. Like his setups are really great. He doesn't know how to end anything satisfying. I think if they had given Ryan 9 to sort of finish what he started, then I think Ben's arc would have been obviously more consistent. Like Ryan killed Snoke in 8 because it would have, like, we've seen that already, and people have criticized Force Awakens for being a blueprint ripoff of A New Hope. And so Ryan was like, okay, they didn't like that, we're not going to do it. So he changed the formula, and then people were like, this is too different, why'd you do that? So like the fans will never be happy, first of all. But
yeah, Star Wars fans are the ones who hate Star Wars the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are Star Wars fans like myself who hate Star Wars fans like that.
But yeah, so you were saying about Ryan. Ryan did.
Yeah, I mean, he changed the formula. He subverted the subversion. He killed the big bad, which does leave us on like okay, well now like I literally don't know what could happen next, which is great in a big franchise like this. Like that's pretty unexpected to not be able to predict the finale. Usually these things are pretty predictable.
Yeah, usually you can just say in the first one you get introduced, in the middle one they lose, in the last one they win. But I mean,
precisely, yeah. And so Ryan obviously was setting up Kylo to be like the big bad, which would have been really interesting. And they did sort of start that in 9 with him being sort of like the new leader. But then they brought back Palpatine, which sort of canceled that out.
My boy.
Yeah, I'm not against that decision either. Like, I think it makes sense.
It does.
Does Rey being a Palpatine make sense?
Not
less
really.
so.
If she was a
Less
daughter
so.
of a clone, it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
luckily I've read the novelizations and the comics, so I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. Like, it does actually help it tie into the other trilogies a little bit better. Because in some ways the sequels did feel a little bit disconnected from the rest of the saga, but so it makes sense. I guess
it makes sense. And there's something I came across like a year ago, I think, and it stuck with me ever since. I cannot find the original person who commented it, but it's changed the way I've looked at 9, and it to a more positive light. It changed my perception of how the saga ends. I like to think that the saga begins with a Skywalker and a Palpatine coming together to destroy the Jedi and take control and total darkness. And the saga ends with a Skywalker and a Palpatine coming together to defeat the Sith and restore the Jedi Order. I think it's a nice way to look at it. It makes me feel more complete.
It does tie it together a bit better when you think of it that way. Like, this has sort of been a story of Palpatine and Skywalker the whole time. I think if they had pulled, like, a Deathly Hallows Part 1 and, like, revealed Palpatine at the end of Episode 8, it would have totally worked a lot better.
That would have been
like,
really good.
I've been thinking of doing a re-edit where
really
instead of revealing Palpatine in the opening crawl, well, technically the trailer,
the dead speak.
Like, that's such a silly way to introduce such a major player.
And we're not going to mention how the message came in Fortnite.
Right. Oh, I didn't even know about that until after, but yeah, that's just.
But yeah, I get what you're
painful.
saying. Like at the very end, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the shot where everybody's on the Falcon and the camera's slowly panning out before we cut to Broom Boy and that whole finalizing scene. Like, right there, the camera stops and you hear like this static noise, and then you hear Palpatine's voice come on, and it ends like right there. Like, that would have been.
Yeah. It could have been something like that for sure. I'm also thinking of doing the re-edit where it plays out as normal. We see Broom Boy, and then, like, once it pans up to the stars, you're expecting, cut to credits, but then it just keeps going and fade, and then, like, we sort of, like, get that
like into the Rise of
fade out
Skywalker
to,
intro,
into
and, like,
Exegol.
Kylo doing his stuff, and it's like a 5-minute
Exactly,
sequence.
yeah. And I mean, there's that time jump there, but we wouldn't even need to see Kylo going there, I guess, but just some sort of, like, cliffhanger there, like, I think could have fixed a lot.
Yeah, it could have fixed quite a bit, but and making another thing that I didn't really enjoy about The Rise of Skywalker is that they made Rey a Palpatine when in the previous film they kind of set her up as not as a nobody, but as an individual not connected to blood. And I remember some character saying some things are stronger than blood. Luke, probably. I really liked that she was set up as just this individual person that had this power awaken inside her. And do we have to have an explanation for it? I mean,
yeah, I have a really good answer, actually. I was also really mad that they made Rey a Palpatine, just because, like, it totally rewrites the message that we're sending to kids who are watching this. Like, Rey's entire character was based around, like, you can be important without being born into, like, a lineage. Like, heroes can come from anywhere. And that's the whole point of Broom Boy, is, like, you can be a nobody, quote unquote, and you can still be a hero. Making Rey a Palpatine makes her royalty and makes her, like, a whole bunch of things that completely contradict her character. But if they had gone with the nobody route, it's pretty much explained, and, like, I only have this answer ready because so many people hate on Rey and, like, call her a Mary Sue and all that. But basically the Force is, like, almost like an active player in the game. Like, it's constantly balancing things. And so when you have Ben, who's, like, one of the most powerful dark side users, I guess you could say, born, the Force was, like, unbalanced, and, like, that's why Snoke says darkness rises and light to meet it. Rey was only, like, well, this is, like, if she's a nobody, but Rey only got so much power to balance and be Ben's, like, equal in the Force. And so I don't know if you're familiar, but, like, I was really, like, deep into the, like, the Reylo ship thing. Like, I was all about it. And
really?
So, like, I've researched, like, cool, a ton about, like, the dyad and stuff, and the dyad's the most interesting thing in the sequel trilogy, for sure.
I really love their Force connections and that whole thing that was introduced in The Last Jedi, and luckily it carries on to The Rise of Skywalker too. I love that mini duel that they had while Rey's on the ship and Kylo's on the planet. Really, really awesome. But as you were saying, darkness rises and light to meet it. A lot of people say that since they're having these Force connections, their power kind of, like, lends to each other, like, through that. Like, if Ben talks more to Rey, like, she gains more of his power because she has that connection with him. like a yin yang sort of.
It's very yin
there.
yang. I mean, there's so much yin yang imagery in the sequels. Like, I mean, I could talk about it for hours, but I will spare your audience from that.
That's okay. That's totally fine, man. There's one I would like to touch on that I didn't notice until most recently. In The Last Jedi, when Rey is practicing her saber training on the rock, Ben uses the same saber moves in his fight against Luke later.
Yep.
And that's a cool connection. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I really like that.
They do. I don't know if it's 100% intentional, but they have used choreography to tell stories in a way which is really cool.
That is very cool.
But like in Force Awakens, when Rey is first using the lightsaber, she uses the same like style that Palpatine uses. I don't remember which form it is.
I don't know. It's I have to learn this. I have to touch up on my lightsaber forms.
But yeah, she uses that, and so like even if it wasn't planned from the beginning that she was supposed to be a Palpatine, like there are things that could lead to it. Like in The Force Awakens, JJ basically set up like a bunch of different webs so that they could take it in any direction.
Yeah, she could have been. I think it's what Daisy Ridley said in an interview. She said in episode 9, JJ was saying that at first it might be a Kenobi and it might be a Palpatine. Okay, yeah, Palpatine.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's good to set that up in a way to where you can go in a certain direction.
Just in case something goes wrong midway, yeah.
Just in case something goes wrong. Yeah, so, I mean, another thing that I'm a little hesitant about in the sequel trilogy is that they didn't have a full plan that was overarching throughout the entire 3 films. That they kind of just went from one film to the next without really having a consistent storyline, and that's the criticism I see a lot of people apply to the sequels. I was wondering, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of touched on it a little bit before in saying like each of the films looked at individually, like they're all really good standalone films.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's really where they were missing George and like this through line vision. I mean, I think they did do it for just flexibility and like, I think they wanted to see how the audience would react to each one and then sort of mold the next one based on criticisms of the last.
I agree with you.
Which doesn't really work with Star Wars fans. And that's something that they should have anticipated as well. That like, if you change something mid-course, sure, you'll please the 30% of fans who were mad about it, but you'll upset the 70% of fans who liked where it was going. So that's sort of my take on it. Like,
and I agree with you with about the Rise of Skywalker and how it was sort of like a damage control.
Yeah, very much
or
so.
like hey guys, we're just bringing back Palpatine to have Palpatine here. Don't get mad at us again. Sorry. And I feel like it would have been a lot better if they just carried through, like you said, if they just gave Ryan the last one. Hey, it might have gotten backlash, but would it have aged better? Probably yes.
Yeah, I think that sort of happened with The Last Jedi in the past 2 years. The fan reception of it has it's been a little bit better. It's not as toxic of a thing to talk about now. Like, it's definitely less of a hot take to say that The Last Jedi is a good movie now. And it's really interesting how like the receptions of fans and critics were sort of flip-flopped on the 2 last ones, 8 and 9.
Right.
Fans hated The Last Jedi, critics loved it. Critics hated episode 9, and fans, for the most part, like, it had a pretty good score. So
yeah, it's
just interesting. And like, I don't really know if there's a single person to blame. Like, I would love to blame just JJ for killing off my favorite character, but I don't think I can. Like, I don't think it's any single person's fault.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, killing off Ben in the end, I don't think it was the best decision.
It was the worst decision. I'm going to get so mad about this, dude. Oh, my gosh.
Bruce just goes out.
I'm going to go off, dude. Like,
Well, I'm just gonna say this first, and you can reply to it however you want. I
Of
think
course,
it
yeah,
was.
for sure.
I mean, if you want to look at it like as a good parallel to Anakin passing away after he like saves Luke, in that instance, I mean, Luke was alive, and I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, after he saves Luke, he's like critical and he has to die.
Yep.
But in this instance, I mean, it's Rey dying, and then I guess since Rey kind of saved his life and purified him on their fight on the second Death Star wreckage, he kind of like repays the favor and saves her.
Yep.
I don't feel happy with it because if they'd kept Ben alive, I feel like his arc would have gone to new heights. Because I'm just going to give you a hypothetical scene here. Ben gets like seriously wounded, and Rey is carrying him back to the Resistance. And you know how in the end of The Rise of Skywalker, everybody's having this big party, everybody's celebrating. Imagine Rey coming out of like the Falcon or her X-Wing, sorry, her X-Wing, she didn't take the Falcon, of her X-Wing, and like carrying Ben, and just everybody just watching like, why are you carrying this person?
It's
Like, this is Kylo Ren.
yeah.
And she replies like, no, it's Ben Solo. And then maybe like Chewie like picks him up and like puts him on a bed, and he has so much he has to redeem himself for. He can't just get an easy out like
Atone
Anakin.
for, yeah.
Exactly. He has a lot to atone for. And you can even tie that back to Yoda's teachings. The greatest teacher failure is. You can like tie that in there. I feel like that would have been a really interesting way to go. You're free to express your thoughts now.
All right,
on
man.
How it went
Here
down.
we go. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great hypothetical. It's something that I've thought about a lot. I mean, I guess it wasn't the worst possible scenario because they did, like, finally sort of show, like, that there is... The relationship that they sort of ended them on was very satisfying to me until he died. Like, they did the whole Romeo and Juliet thing where, like... It was like people laughed at that part when he fell back down because out of just pure shock. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're really going to do this?
Yeah,
like,
I was a bit confused in the theater too.
I'm not sure if you've seen like any of the comics, like the Kylo Ren comics or like any of the expanded lore. Okay. It really goes deeper into like what made Ben Kylo, and
It's very interesting. I've read the Rise of Kylo Ren comics and all that. It's
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, where we find out like he didn't slaughter Luke's school of foundling Jedis, and
no. There's even a scene where he's holding like trying to save someone, and his fellow Jedi thinks he's evil or bad, and he comes by and he has to let the other person go, and you see how it visibly affects him. Like, oh, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm doing this. Like, why am I doing this?
I mean, it's just a flurry of unfortunate circumstances that sort of led him to this place where he thought he didn't have a point of return. And by killing a character, and like if you do read the comics, like you'll see that Snoke is essentially like your typical abuser character. Like, he's a manipulator. It's like really horrible behavior that we see often happening to like impressionable youths. And so to kill this character who's like been abused and traumatized, I'm just like, I made bets that Ben would live to the end of the series because I thought there's no way Disney would kill a character who's like been through so much trauma and like isn't really a bad person. And like by killing him, what kind of message are you sending to the audience? Like, it's not so much that you're telling people that like you can't be redeemed, but by repeating what happened to Vader, going off of that line that you mentioned, sure, it's like repeating the cycles, like, yeah, Star Wars is poetry, it rhymes and all that stuff, but it would have been so much more, like, it would have been uncharted territory to have somebody redeem themselves and not be punished for it. Like,
right,
for Ben to be able to do that, like, it shows he's literally like the strongest Force user we've seen in any of the movies.
Yeah, he's the grandson of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, quite beautifully, I don't know if they intended this, but in episode 7, when he says to Vader's mask, "I'll finish what you started," the thing that, like, I've had conversations about this before, but like the thing that Vader started wasn't killing the Jedi. It was bringing balance to the Force. That's what he started. And so when Rey says, like, you're afraid that you'll never be as powerful as Darth Vader, the most powerful thing Vader ever did was killing the Emperor. And so...
And he kind of, like, reacts to that.
Yeah. And, like, wanting to bring someone back from the dead was Vader's entire crux, right? And so Ben did finish what Vader started by realizing this power and, like, actually bringing someone back from the dead, which is insane.
That's a really brilliant observation, man.
Thank you.
I never heard.
I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah, I can see you thought about it a lot. Wow.
But yeah, it's like just really frustrating on so many fronts that they would kill him off like that. And like, I want to love The Rise of Skywalker so much because it's so beautifully shot and like all the performances are fantastic. And it's just like when I think back to it and I think like, oh wait, like, yeah, it sort of just ends in a place where, like, I don't even care that Rey's like a Skywalker or whatever. Like, she can say whatever she wants, but it's more the fact that, like, there's this hole in the series now. And unless they retroactively, like, make a standalone, a solo film, if you will, I was
gonna talk to you about that. Because you know how the prequels on their own, people felt like it didn't tell Anakin's story in the right way, like his gradual fall. And then the Clone Wars came out, the show, and expanded
supplementary content.
Supplementary content, and they'll probably make something similar to the Clone Wars, I would think, to maybe supplement the gap between Episode 8 and Rise of Skywalker or something like that. Like, if that would happen, it would definitely change a few things.
It would. I will not forgive them unless they make the supplementary content about the world between worlds where Ben Solo's still there somewhere and somebody goes and rescues him. Like, I seriously will not forgive them until they do that. Because, yeah, like, the ending of 9 just leaves you so empty. Like, it's technically speaking, like, it's a happy ending. But, like, I don't see how anybody can actually be, like, fulfilled by that.
Yeah.
It hurts.
It hurts. But I will say that final scene of Rey at Luke's old house was really nice, really well shot.
Yep.
I thought that was a great book, and a lot of people are saying, why did you bury Anakin's lightsaber in sand? What are you doing?
It gets everywhere, yeah.
But I thought it was all right. Would you have preferred her going maybe to another spot, like, I don't know, where the saga could end? Because Darth Maul himself said it ends where it began, on a planet with twin suns.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's really poetic. And I actually thought about that in The Rise of Skywalker. I said, they're probably going to close it on Tatooine. Because that'd be really cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff about the ending, like the actual last few minutes that I could go into. I don't mind that it ended there. I think, like, yeah, it rhymes, like, it's poetry. It makes sense. The thing that, like, I don't know, mystifies me a little bit is the last shot. First of all, I do want to compliment, like, we said at the beginning we weren't going to, like, rip on any movie too much. I have been sort of criticizing a lot.
It's all right. It's all right. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Dude. Go on ahead.
So I do want to praise the ending a little bit where, I don't know, I think most of the time when we see the suns on Tatooine, it's a sunset, right? Where, yeah, the binary sunset in 4, and then when Luke is on Ahch-To and he's, like, sort of imagining.
That's beautiful. We didn't talk about that. That was, like, the best. That was the best end to his character there.
And then, like, I think at the end of Revenge of the Sith, it's a sunset as well.
Yep.
Yeah. I heard that the last shot is actually a sunrise.
Oh.
With Rey and BB-8 there. I heard it's a sunrise. I'm pretty sure it's true. Like, maybe you can see the orbs, like, going up or something, but it sort of signals, like, a new beginning opposed to, like, chapters ending.
I'd like to look at it that way.
Which I did appreciate. So there's my There's my appreciation for it. Now, I think like it does mystify me because the shot of the silhouette of Rey is actually a composite from her standing on the desert in Pisana with the lightsaber, which leads me to be like almost 100% sure that like this was not the original ending. And it just makes me wonder like what was it going to be, because I was fully expecting like an alternate ending or something on to be released at some point, but they're not going to do it.
Release the JJ cut.
And release the JJ cut, right? I mean, yeah, it just makes me wonder like maybe the original ending was supposed to have been there or something like that. I don't know.
That would have been cool.
It does make me think that the ending is like rushed, and it was like they had tons of reshoots and stuff. So
yeah, they did have quite a bit of reshoots, but it all came together somewhat in the end. Mm-hmm. And speaking of endings, we're nearer to the end here.
Yeah.
This has been just absolutely a blast. It's going
to be a long one for you to cut.
Yeah, this is a great May the 4th discussion for all of you to listen to on this beautiful day. One thing I did forget to ask is, what is your favorite film out of the sequel trilogy?
It's The Force Awakens. Force Awakens is actually like probably my second favorite Star Wars film, like period. I love it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories with that one. It's a close second to The Last Jedi for me. Last Jedi is my favorite one.
Respect. Yeah, I like it.
I took so much away from it. I saw it like twice in theaters, and which is a lot for me. And it just blew me away completely. Yeah, I mean, the sequel trilogy as a whole, I mean, first of all, the sequel trilogy, it may have its flaws, but it's still Star Wars in the end. It's still fun. Mm-hmm. It's still, there's things you can hate about it, but there's also things you can like about it. There's hate rises and things you like about it to meet it. In Star Wars in general, what is something you take away? What is something that, if it's emotional or maybe like marveling at what happened with all the behind the scenes, or what's something that just sticks with you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is more of like the concept of it rather than like specific things about the story. The main thing being like the concept is it's poetry, like it rhymes, like things repeat, it's a cycle. So the coolest thing for me about Star Wars is like I'm Japanese, and so like the films of Kurosawa have always meant the most to me in terms of cinema.
Of course.
But it's just really cool that Star Wars, which is like the biggest franchise ever, was like largely inspired by several of Kurosawa's films.
Yeah, it's some of its roots.
Yeah, like both with like the wipe transitions and the character designs, like Yoda, for example, is...
And the long shots and...
Yeah, exactly. It's cool, though, because it comes full circle when Kurosawa was nearing, like, the end of his career in the 80s. He wasn't getting funding anymore for his films. And Lucas, who was, like, a huge admirer of his at the time, he'd struck gold with A New Hope, and so he had a ton of cash to spare. And so he actually helped fund and produce two of Kurosawa's last masterpieces, which are Kagemusha and Ran.
Wow. I did not know that.
And so it's like pay it forward. Like it does come full circle. Star Wars wouldn't exist without Kurosawa, and Kurosawa's two masterpieces would not exist without George Lucas. So it's beautiful. Yeah, that's what I take away.
Oh, wow. It's like poetry. It rhymes. No, I enjoy that whole aspect too, of parallels and learning from the past and being mindful of the future, and it's something I take away. And of course, what I touched on earlier, the collaboration of it all, like set designers, VFX artists, and you can see while they're making it, especially with the Rise of Skywalker documentary and the Revenge of the Sith documentary, they're having fun, like behind the scenes. Like George is like cracking jokes, and they're filming like debacles between the sound designers and the music like score like levelers. Like they're like, no, this sounds too high. No, the music's too high. Lower it down. And just like, calm down, guys. Come on. it's really fun to watch, and both for learning and for just seeing how it was made. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that's Star Wars for us. I invite everybody else who's listened to leave a comment down below. What is Star Wars to you? And what are your thoughts on the sequel trilogy? We'd love to hear them. And with that, we're going to close out here. Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Was super, super, super fun. One more thing, what are you doing for May the 4th?
Today I will be rewatching The Force Awakens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Or are you going to be checking out The Bad Batch?
I'm not as hyped personally. I think I need to take a step back from Star Wars actually for a bit. Loved The Mandalorian, but yeah, I think like what makes Star Wars special to me is that it's an experience, and like when they started releasing a movie every year, it started to concern me a bit.
I understand you there.
I do love the sort of anticipation that comes between the years, like what is going to come next. So I'm going to take a step back for a bit, but
yeah, this was a good cleansing conversation to have.
Absolutely. And I hear Ryan's trilogy is still greenlit, so maybe I'll rejoin the Force when it comes out.
You'll reconnect.
I'll reconnect. I'm going to pull a Luke right now.
Yeah, just pull a Luke. Just connect for a bit. Go to Octo and just meditate and catch fish with a big stick.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, guys, you can follow Bruce at The Dance of Cinema on Instagram. It's an amazing film page. He's in the middle of his top 200 films of all time. What was the most recent one you did?
Yesterday, well, unfortunately, it flopped like big time, but it was for the 2015 film The Fits, and
The Fits,
very indie film.
Oh yeah, I saw that post.
Yeah, it's just too bad. Like all of the films that I've posted about like that have been from female directors have gotten significantly less interactions on it. Like I'm not trying to say it's a trend, but come on, guys.
Come on, guys.
Expand your horizons a little bit.
Expand your horizons. Look into more diverse films and filmmakers. And that's
100%,
what Bruce's page definitely tries to accomplish. And I've being introduced to a ton of new films with each post you do. So
I'm glad to hear
thanks
it.
for posting those. Yeah, guys, you can also check out his channel, which I'll link down below. He's done some Star Wars edits, and he has some amazing short films that you guys should definitely check out. Well, that's it for now. This has been James in the Frames on May 4th. May the 4th be with you all, and I will see you after the credits.